welcome back to my channel, The Spiritual Craft. In this video, I am writing and talking about a spell for letting go, to release, to forgive. This is a spell that I wrote I started writing back in February, but I hadn't used it. I've mostly been working on shadow work, and I definitely think that shadow work is a precursor to a spell like this. Of course, I don't think that you should this is just my thoughts, but I don't think that you should just be releasing pain and old memories and things like that without actually sitting with that pain, sitting with those memories and working through it and trying to figure out what lesson those things played in your life. So I recommend to sit with it, try to understand it and put it in perspective before you choose to just release it. So in this spell to release and forgive, these are some of the ingredients or materials that you can use. As always, you can feel free to switch out, add, remove anything that you choose. So these are some of the things on my list: a white candle, pink salt, sage, rose petals or rose oil, a selenite. I have a selenite wand that I think works really well. You can have a palm stone, anything like that, just selenite generally. Rosemary, again, this can be the oil or just the herb, a bowl of water, and some paper. So these are some of the things that you can use. Of course, I know many witches are not fond of using white sage currently. This, as with everything else, is optional, and I just want to make a note about the sage, particularly in this spell. When I wrote the spell, it was dealing with some trauma that I wanted to completely get rid of, which is, what sage does. After working with the trauma, I've decided not to use the sage because it's something that I need to integrate, and I'll talk more about that in just a bit. But consider the ingredients that you're using if you're choosing to do this particular spell. Sage, as we know, gets rid of any and all energy, not just the negative. So remember that if you choose to use the sage in your working. Alright, so this is how you would use these materials and kind of go about doing the spell. So you're going to write down the things that you'd like to let go of, the things that you'd like to release and forgive. This can be people or occurrences, events, anything like that. Anything that you'd like to forgive. You can, if like me, you may be dealing with some trauma, of course you're not going to want to write that all out. So another way that you can do this is to use keywords. Something that's going to allow you to know what you're referring to, but without writing everything down word for word. You can also use pictures. Okay? You're going to focus on these if you write them down on separate sheets of paper, or if you have pictures, depending on how you have yours set up. Focus on these items one by one as you say the spell. And as you're saying the spell, you want to tear the paper and burn each piece in the candle and then drop it into the water. You want to repeat this with each one, with each thing that you want to forgive and forget, with the intention that it's gone for good. Just dust and ashes, right? Return it from where it came. Before tearing the paper, think about the benefit or the lesson you received from having this or that in your life, right? So you do want to think about the role that it played. What did it do for you? Because these lessons weren't in your life for no good reason, right? So think about the good reason that they were there, even if they did cause harm. So these are some of the ways that I put down the spell. Again, I have various forms that you could use. As you'll see, I have quite a bit, so you definitely do not just have to write through the entire or read through the entire thing. And as always, I would always recommend, just as I do for myself, to take from the spell what resonates with you, what you like about it, and you can always rewrite it in any way that you see fit. Okay, I definitely don't consider it to be copying or anything like that. If you choose to use any of the words from the spell and rearrange any of the words, replace any words, do whatever resonates with you. If you're doing a spell, you're doing it for yourself, so make sure that you really feel it in your heart space. Notice that I do include blanks, so you can fill those blanks with whatever fits best for you. However you want to feel once you leave that trauma, once you leave that memory, once you leave that person behind, however you want to feel, you can put that there. You can use these together, you can use them separately. Of course, you can end it with let it be, so be it. You know, however you typically end your spells, you can throw that on the end. You can add an intro, maybe to the god or goddess or deity that you work with. You can do that, of course. Again, just use it as it would work best for you. So this third one that I'm using, I liked this because it's pretty short and concise if you're doing several different, how can I say that, topics or memories that you're trying to release. So in this one, you can put one of those memories or people or however you're doing it in each one of those blanks. Once again, you can change out any of those words that you see fit. So I think what I like the most about this particular, I would say this spell, but it's obviously multiple parts. If you want to use the whole part, I think that's what I intended when I wrote it, but rewriting it, I realized how long it truly is, and there's no reason to have it so long. But what I like about it is that you can kind of mix and match parts that you like and leave out parts that you don't like. So lots of options with this one, same as with the materials that you're using. Generally, those would be good for this type of spell, but really, you have so much freedom to use them as you see fit, right? With whatever feels good to you. So this piece on the right is actually what I incorporated the most in the spell that I did. And I really liked this particular one because it's not necessarily like, let's throw that out or let's get rid of that. And if you chose to do that, that's totally fine. But I liked this one because it's saying like, let's just get rid of that stuff that's bad. I don't want to be burdened. I don't want to be held down by that anymore. I forgive myself for all of those things that I feel like I regret. I forgive myself for the things that I am holding on to that I don't need to be holding on to anymore. And this reminded me so much of the Serenity Prayer, which is something that I use all the time. I like that it's saying, I allow myself. It's not asking anybody else, right? I know that the things that are holding me back are mine, right? I know that I'm not I'm not allowing myself to move forward, to just leave it. And the end piece here is my own version of the Serenity Prayer. After sitting with my trauma, sitting with my pain, sitting with my lessons, and doing my shadow work, I discovered that I don't necessarily want to just throw everything out there. What I should be doing is using that pain and using those lessons to become stronger, to become a stronger person. So I'm going to take this and once again put it into my grimoire. So I encourage you to write down whatever you're using in your particular spell, rewrite it however you see fit. You can use whichever phrases I've used, you can add or subtract however you'd like, and keep that in your grimoire with your other working. So once again, I encourage you to do some shadow work before just releasing or trying to get rid. So one way that you can do this is to use a black candle, light it, and keep it behind you so that your shadow is cast in front of you and you can kind of physically speak to your shadow. I like to keep a journal and keep anything that I'm working on in there. Alright, so into the spell work itself. So you'll kind of see how I have some of my materials set up for this spell. I was not too specific as to how to use the materials. You can use them really in any way that you'd like. So remember, anytime you're working with fire, candles, especially in a spell like this where you're burning paper, please be safe. Make sure that you do have enough water to put out any fire that you might start. And just don't be careless. Okay, be extra careful with your burning paper. Alright, so this was kind of after I had done my spell work, so you don't see the bowl of water or the torn paper. But you can see here I have my white candle. I do have some of the pink salt within the candle as well as around with the rose petals. If you have one of those tapered candles, another way that you can do this is to use some rose oil or any type of oil if you have rose petals. So you can use rose oil and then put on the pink salt and sage if you're using it. Or you can put on any type of oil and then press on the salt and rose petals and maybe just burn the sage. Really in any way. You can do the same thing with the rosemary. Mirrors are really good in shadow work, and I consider this type of kind of release and forgive spell to be closely related to shadow work. So I did incorporate the mirror here. I did also use the rosemary oil and the selenite wand. So you can't see the selenite wand here, but it doesn't have to be a wand. If you have just a touchstone, if you have a piece of quartz, that'll do fine. What I like about the selenite is that you don't have to cleanse it. So you don't have to worry about it absorbing all of this kind of negativity and holding it. Whereas quartz does tend to hold on to things like that, and you often won't want to reuse a stone that's kind of seeped in that negative energy. Quartz does cleanse pretty well. So that is one that you could use and probably cleanse it, but use your own judgment. Finally, to include the sage, one way that you can use the sage in this spell is to burn it after you're done releasing all of your regrets and memories and everything else. So once you've burned the paper, you can also burn the sage. Alright, so that is my spell for releasing, letting go, and forgiving. Please feel free to ask questions if you have any in the comments below. If you feel like you learned something from this, please like and subscribe.